Welcome. In this video we will see how to use BPMN to model a simple business process. We will learn about the main concepts of BPMN and their graphical representation. BPMN is an acronym for Business Process Model and Notation. It defines a model and a notation. As a model, it defines a set of concepts and their relationships. For instance, it defines what processes, messages, and activities are. As a notation, it defines diagrams for representing these concepts and relationships graphically. First, we will introduce the currency exchange business process. Next, we will describe the BPMN elements in general, and in more detail the elements used in this example. Then, we will examine in detail the two possible scenarios: when the client rejects the terms offered by the currency exchange office, and when the client accepts the terms and the currency exchange is accomplished. Finally, we will briefly see the difference between a private and a public process. Business process as a BPMN collaboration. A currency exchange office is a business that makes its profit by buying foreign currency and then selling the same currency at a higher exchange rate. The currency exchange business process consists of the interaction of a business role, the client, and a business entity, the currency exchange office. In BPMN, business roles and business entities are known as participants. Participants are represented by pools. Their interactions are realized through message flows. A pool may have no internal details, that is, it can be a black box. Or it may have internal details, in the form of the process that will be executed. Message flows connect elements in different pools. This is a collaboration diagram. A collaboration is a collection of participants shown as pools. Their interactions are shown by message flows, and may include processes within the pools. In BPMN, a business process is modeled by a collaboration among two or more participants. That is, a single process represents a part of a business process, the part that is performed by one of the participants. The business transaction occurs between the client and the currency exchange office. But actually, the client interacts with a clerk who works for the currency exchange office. The clerk is an internal role. Internal roles are represented by lanes. A lane extends the entire length of the pool. It is a partition that is used to organize and categorize activities within a pool. They are often used for such things as internal roles, systems, or organizational units. BPMN elements. In BPMN, a process is depicted as a graph of flow elements connected by sequence flows. Flow elements are activities, events, and gateways. Activities represent points in a process flow where work is performed. They are the executable elements of a BPMN process. An event is something that happens during a process. These events affect the flow of the process and usually have a cause or an impact. There are three main types of events: start events, which indicate where a process will start; end events, which indicate where a path of a process will end; and intermediate events, which indicate where something happens somewhere between the start and the end of a process. Gateways are used to control how sequence flows interact as they converge and diverge within a process. Unlike activities, gateways do not represent work being done, and they are considered to have zero effect on the operational measures of the process, such as cost or time. A sequence flow shows the order in which activities are performed in a process, and is represented with a solid graphical line. Each flow has only one source and only one target. A sequence flow cannot cross the boundaries of a pool. A message flow shows the flow of messages between two participants. They are used to model the coordination between the processes of two participants in a collaboration. Now we will describe in detail the elements used in this example. There are two types of activities: subprocess and task. A subprocess is a compound activity that is included within a process. It can be broken down into a finer level of detail. By contrast, a task is an atomic activity. It is used when the work in the process is not broken down to a finer level detail. There are 8 types of tasks. A graphical marker in the upper left corner of the shape indicates its type. In this example, 2 types of tasks are used: manual task and user task. A manual task is expected to be performed without the aid of any application. An example of this could be an IT technician installing a modem at a customer location. A user task is a typical workflow task, where a human performer executes the task with the assistance of a software application. As the name implies, the start event indicates where a process will start. Because it starts the flow of the process, it will not have any incoming sequence flows. A start event is a circle drawn with a single thin line. There are 7 types of start events. In this example, 2 types are used: none and message. The none start event does not have a defined trigger. A message start event is triggered when a message arrives from a participant. The actual participant, from which the message is received, can be connected to the event using a message flow. As the name implies, the end event indicates where a process will end. Because it ends the flow of the process, it will not have any outgoing sequence flows. An end event is a circle drawn with a single thick line. There may be multiple end events within a process. There are 9 types of end events. In this example, 2 types are used: none and message. The none end event does not have a defined result. A message end event indicates that a message is sent to a participant at the conclusion of the process. The actual participant, to which the message is sent, can be connected to the event using a message flow. As the name implies, the intermediate event indicates where something happens somewhere between the start and end of a process. An intermediate event is a circle drawn with a double thin line. There are 12 types of intermediate events. In this example, 2 variants of message intermediate events are used: catch and throw. When used to catch a message, the process waits until a message arrives from a participant. When used to throw a message, the process immediately sends a message to a participant. In both cases, the participant can be connected to the event using a message flow. A gateway is used to control the divergence and convergence of sequence flows in a process. There are 6 types of gateways. A graphical marker in the center of the shape indicates its type. In this example, 2 types are used: database exclusive gateway and event-based exclusive gateway. A database exclusive gateway has 2 or more outgoing paths. Each path is guarded by a Boolean expression. The process continues through the path whose expression evaluates to true. It can be thought of as a question that is asked at a particular point in the process. The question has a defined set of alternative answers. An event-based exclusive gateway has 2 or more outgoing paths. Each path is guarded by an event. The process waits until any of the events is triggered. Then the process continues through the path that follows the triggered event. All the remaining paths are discarded. A sequence flow is used to show the order that activities will be performed in a process. Uncontrolled sequence flow refers to flow that is not affected by any conditions, or does not pass through a gateway. The simplest example of this is a single sequence flow connecting 2 activities. A conditional sequence flow has a condition expression that is evaluated at runtime to determine whether or not the sequence flow will be used. The simplest example of this is an outgoing sequence flow of a database exclusive gateway. A message flow shows the flow of messages between 2 participants that are prepared to send and receive them. A message flow must connect 2 separate pools. The message associated with the message flow can also be shown. A message depicts the contents of a communication between 2 participants. These contents can be either physical items, such as some medicines, or information items, such as the prescription of those medicines. Business Process 2 Scenarios. The business process comprises two scenarios. In the first one, the client rejects the terms offered, and the whole transaction is cancelled. In the second one, the client accepts the terms, and the currency exchange is accomplished. Now let's examine the first scenario step by step using BPMN terminology. The client's process starts. His first action is to carry out a manual task. Then, he sends a message to the currency exchange office, and proceeds to wait for an incoming message with the currency exchange office's response. When the client's message arrives, the currency exchange office's process begins. The clerk proceeds to carry out a user task. Then he sends a message to the client and proceeds to wait for the arrival of one of two possible messages. When the message arrives, the client proceeds to carry out a manual task, where he decides whether to accept or reject the terms. With the decision already taken, he proceeds to follow the path signaled by the exclusive gateway. In this scenario, he follows the sequence flow with the condition terms rejected and sends a message to the currency exchange office. This action finishes the client's process. The clerk, who is waiting for the client's decision, receives the message indicating the rejection of the terms offered. Then, the currency exchange office's process ends. In the second scenario, the client accepts the terms. In both scenarios, the first part is the same. If the client decides to accept the terms, he follows the sequence flow with the condition terms accepted, and hands over the money to the clerk. In BPMN, this is expressed by a message associated with the message flow. The clerk, who is waiting for the client's decision, receives the money, and proceeds to register the transaction using a user task. Then, he hands over the money, and the receipt, to the client. With this action, the currency exchange office's process ends. The client was waiting for a message. When it arrives, he proceeds to carry out a manual task. After verifying that all is correct, the client's process ends. Private process, public process, and black box. This collaboration contains two private processes, each one inside a participant's pool. A private process contains all the elements needed to fulfill its purpose. Some elements are used to communicate with other participants. Others are used to carry out its internal work. Private processes can be non-executable, such as those used for documenting processes of a quality management system, or they can be executable if they are modeled to be executed by a BPM suite, such as Bizagi, Bonita BPM, or Oracle BPM suite. Private processes can be part of collaborations, or they can be modeled separately. If the modeler just wants to show how a process interacts with its surroundings, he can use a public process. In a public process, only those flow elements that are used to communicate with other participants are included. All other internal elements are not shown. Thus, the public process shows to the outside world the message flows and their order. Public processes can be modeled separately, but they are usually used within collaborations. Sometimes all the internal elements of a process are not relevant, even those used to communicate with other participants. In this case, a black box is enough to model a participant in a collaboration. Thank you for watching. Please do like and share this video, and also subscribe to the channel.